Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? I see you've come back for more. If you're new here, buckle up. And thank you all for joining me today. My name is DeRay, aka Rainbow Fright, lover of all things dark, creepy, and weird. And today, I'll be comparing the OG Evil Dead to its remake from 2013 with special guest Nightmare Maven. Vicky is a pillar in the horror community, so if you haven't seen any of her content yet, you probably live under a rock. Nightmare Maven enjoys doing spoiler-free reviews, deep dives, live pumpkin carvings, and more. To learn more about her channel and to learn more about what she's got coming up, stick around to the end. But for now, please join me in welcoming Nightmare Maven.
Vicky, hi, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today for this comparison.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really thankful you gave me the choice on what movies to talk about because I love talking about the Evil Dead and I love talking about the Evil Dead remake. So I'm really excited.
Hell yes. I've been wanting to talk about this one for so long. So I'm so glad that you picked this one as well. I absolutely love both movies.
Same.
Well, before we start comparing these two movies, here's a quick synopsis. And as always, Stardust spoilers are ahead.
In the 1981 film Evil Dead, 5 college students vacationing in an isolated cabin in the woods unwittingly unleash malevolent forces after discovering an ancient Sumerian text and audio tapes of incantations. As the evil spirits possess them one by one, Ash Williams must fight to survive and save his friends from becoming demonic. The 2013 remake follows a similar premise, where a group of friends discover the Book of the Dead in a remote cabin, leading to possession and gore, but this time with the intent of helping one of them overcome a drug addiction.
Well, Vicky, so tell us, when did you first see both movies and what were your feelings about them?
I really, for the Evil Dead, the original, it's one of those movies that's like, I don't remember exactly the first time I watched it. It just feels like a movie that's like always been there, you know?
Yep.
I can only remember like how I felt watching it for the first time, like at the time, felt like a movie that I like something I hadn't seen before, especially like in terms of like the craziness and the gore and the fact that it kind of just like jumps right into everything too, where it was like very much just like, whoa, what the heck is going on? So it stuck with me for a long time. And for the longest time, it was in my Letterboxd top 4 also. The remake, I'm sure I saw it in theaters. I feel like the older I get, the less I remember. But I just remember that one too being like not what I expected. As horror fans, we get a lot of remakes. Reboots are very common. So I kind of expected it just to be the same. And Fede Alvarez like did such a good job changing the story, which I'm sure we'll definitely get into. And it felt it felt familiar, but like a completely different movie. So, and I know it's for a lot of horror fans, like one of the best remakes, I think, that people like to mention.
Oh, yes. This is definitely one of the top remakes for me of all time, right up there with The Hills Have Eyes, which is referenced in this movie, and The Crazies. Just a really well done story. Really cool reimagining, because like the original, I watched it as a kid. Actually, I remember watching this around 4 or 5 with my dad a lot. He and I would quote this together, and it was one of his favorites, and I still love it to this day. I love it more and more. It gets more cheesier every time I watch it, but I appreciate it even more every time I watch it too. And then like you said, when that remake came out, it was just a bloodbath and just an ode to the original while still being its own thing. And I just love that about it.
Same.
So good.
Absolutely.
So then with the remake, how did you feel about the more serious approach and the lack of humor compared to the rest of the films?
I thought like going in initially, it's like, I feel like could be like a scary choice where you're like, wait, like I know this franchise for being like goofy and over the top. But when you watch the final product, it feels like the best choice they could have made. Like it really stands alone and it stands with the original. I like the darker tone. I think because the original is, I find, still like pretty scary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like deep down, like something ancient in the woods coming after you, like that's horrifying.
Oh yeah.
So I like the serious tone that this one takes. So it really amps up that fear of like something ancient coming after you. Also adding in the kind of like recovering from drug addiction and like the scariness that is as well, like somebody going through withdrawals and somebody trying to be better, and they can say some like crazy and out there things that you don't really know, like if something supernatural could be happening or it's just a product of these withdrawals, and that's also really scary.
Oh yeah. For sure. Because, the first one isn't necessarily, super comical. It might have its moments unintentionally, but then it definitely became a comedic franchise later. But, Sam Raimi was, really trying to get this made and just going around to all kinds of investors looking for the money to put this together. And, back then in the 80s and 70s, this was scary, and it still is scary today for our young generations watching it. But I think kind of just going back to the roots of it being a dark and scary movie was the right choice. And he was just very careful in not disrespecting the idea of addiction and having to go through detox. I think he respected that as well as, the original movie. And like you said, it's scary just to like in real life see somebody going through that. And then you add the supernatural element to it. Just makes it that much more scary.
It is. And both are like a really good, like actual like take on like folk horror, weirdly, which I don't think we really think of these movies as kind of folk horror, but
sure, yeah.
Especially the first one, like it's set in, I know we just know like they're in Tennessee somewhere, but like the filming location is like in Eastern Tennessee, which is where like the Appalachian, that area goes through. And I feel like that area, especially if you're like on TikTok lately, it's like, everyone likes to talk about how scary it is out there. It's like a really, I'm terrified of it. Like, just looking out into the woods, like in my backyard at night, it's like imagining that, like that kind of like shaky cam footage of something like coming through the woods at you. Like I think about that a lot. Weirdly, but it's like a nice bit of like folk horror that like a North American folk horror that doesn't rely on like stereotypes or like exploiting like indigenous stories like from this land. Like it's just like, here's like a scary ancient thing in the woods that just happens to be here, and this is what happens, and it's just really terrifying.
Hell yeah. And you mentioned the camera angles, especially in the original, just that POV of just going through the woods.
Yes.
Super creepy. And it definitely kind of just set the bar in 1981 for future films to kind of be that exciting and kind of just bringing that emotion just with those Dutch angles and fast motions.
Yeah.
I think that really, really helped to make that movie something that stood out back in 1981.
I agree. Like as a young kid watching it, I was like, this is cinema. Like, wait, what is this?
Yeah. I feel like we kind of maybe got a little bit less of that in the remake, but I wasn't upset about it, but I feel like, we could have maybe utilized that a little bit more. But, sure. Being from 2013 in the age of technology, I did also appreciate how Fede stuck to only using practicals and not really using CGI, maybe just a little bit of touch-ups here and there and for the fire, but he honored Sam in, just doing all practicals, which I think benefited because it just looks so amazing.
And it still looks really amazing. Like rewatching it, like even like it's not even that old of a movie, but like the way technology progresses, it's still like, I feel like even just a couple years back, things can look really bad, but this one still looks really good.
So
really good. Like at the time, it was like named, like it set the record for like the most fake blood used in a movie, with just 50,000 gallons alone for the raining blood, which is the most over the top amazing thing I've ever seen. Where I'm just like, of course it would rain blood. Like,
Do you see yourself ripping your arm out from underneath a Jeep?
Oh.
I don't know if I could do it.
I like to think in a desperate situation I would, but I know myself and I'm a very big wuss when it comes to pain, so I feel like I couldn't do it.
Oh man, that dead eye's just gonna have to get me.
It's my, you know what? It's my time. I'm gonna take this. It's what the universe intended for me, I guess.
Exactly. And yeah, just speaking more about the effects, we had Olivia, who's in the bathroom, just carving at her face. One of the top moments in cinema, period, because you just see her working away. You're just like, ooh, she's getting it, but what is she getting? What's she doing over there? And then that little slow reveal, and then, her attacking homeboy is also just perfect.
I love the reveals of that and the comparison to the book, because I feel like the book features a lot more prominently in the remake. Like, we keep cutting back to, like, it seems like a process that we see in the book. Like, there's a acceleration of this possession.
Yeah.
And so, like, you'll kind of see it like right before or right after you've seen like the real life of that. So like kind of seeing the image of like, I think it's like a woman and like she's completely peeled off her face, and then you see what's happened to, and you're like, oh, that's terrifying. Or the one that's like, it's not even the most gory thing, but it's so brutal to think about in real life. The hot water, like where her skin, like where Mia's skin is burning. That's like, that's almost like too realistic for me. Like the rest of it, I'm like, obviously this is over the top, sawing your arm off with like one of those turkey carvers.
I was gonna say turkey carver.
Yeah. The like bubbling of burning skin is like, it's so brutal and so like realistic.
And the sound effects are perfect for that one too.
So it's so much more brutal than the original, which I hadn't rewatched in a while. Like, so when I went to go back to watch it this week, I forgot how gross the original is also.
Yeah. So much blood in that one too.
Yeah. And like,
and other gooey
and other
stuff because he's trying to, Sam was trying to pass the rating system and be like, okay, well maybe they won't, make it an R rating if I have blue and white and other colors in there. Yeah. It's like, no, didn't quite work. It's still disgusting, maybe even more so.
Yeah. Cause then you're like, what is that substance? What is that?
Yep.
I'm like, that's not supposed to come out of me. Like, I forgot how gross it is. And I'm like, wow, okay. Mm-hmm. I love this movie. All right, cool. What's that say about me?
So yeah, how did you then feel about in the remake Ash's character not being reprised and kind of being reimagined instead with Mia's character, and them kind of also psyching us out, making us think that David might be the Ash, but definitely wasn't.
Yeah, I do love that psych out, because that's your initial, because like it being like a remake, I guess I don't always like necessarily like feel the need for characters or actors to, that's not like kind of like on my checklist of horror remakes. Like I'm okay if like if you're trying to do something different and like separate it a little bit, like I'm okay. I don't need to see Bruce Campbell. I feel like I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I feel like especially where the franchise went in the end, you would almost expect it to be comical if he showed up. And I feel like it might have ruined the tone a little bit if they tried to bring too much humor. So I think it was a good choice. But I do like the fake out because David looks very ash coated. He's got like the button up, he's got the dark hair. You're like, okay, like this is how it's going to be. And the movie plays out like the original does, like all the women get possessed first, and it's like not before any man gets possessed, and like okay, he's going to be the last one standing. And then we have this cool kind of like him utilizing the book again to do this ritual to bring Mia back. And so it's like surprise final girl moment, which I feel like it was sick, and it was a nice little surprise when you're kind of taking in the fact that it's a remake. You're kind of expecting where the story is going to go. And Fede was like, no, you don't. I thought it was really clever. So I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought it was.
Yeah, I liked it great too. It was giving me, a bit of Blob vibes, because that's kind of what happened a little bit with the Blob remake. Yeah. We have Mia, who is first an addict, then she becomes a deadite. and then she becomes a final girl, which is really cool. We got to see those iterations of her, and she did amazingly in all of them, because we get Ash, who in the second film, Evil Dead 2, he then becomes a Deadite. We get something that we've probably been craving just to see him turn, but like not die, but what would his makeup look like, And so even though there's some logic stuff there that doesn't make sense, because her skin and bones and body would be all jacked up, but hey, supernatural, right?
You can paint over a lot with that supernatural excuse.
You really can.
Yeah. And it works so well with the addiction angle too, because the whole purpose of them going there is for her to detox and to like go through like the horrible withdrawal part first, so she can be better. And that's essentially like what she goes through with getting possessed, becoming a Deadite. She goes through it like physically, mentally, emotionally, and literally kind of has to die to be resurrected. And so it's like, it's just a very like microcosm of her like recovery her character's recovery, I should say, as a drug addict. And so it's kind of like it beautifully ties in like why they're there in the first place by the end. So I feel like that choice again to make her the final girl clearly is just like a really good storytelling choice.
Hell yeah. Fede just is super talented in coming up with that, because it gives them a purpose to be there versus the first film where they're just there to hang out. And this is his feature debut, and he got this gig based off of a 5-minute short that he did that he wrote and directed. And they're like, all right, and they gave it to somebody else to doctor up a bit because English isn't his first language, but this is just brilliant what he did with that.
I always forget that this is his directorial debut, and then I rewatch. I'm like, how crazy! Like, how did he knock it out of the park so well on the first try? Like, how many other filmmakers can we say that about? Like with their very first feature, like the list isn't long.
Yes.
I don't know if we want to talk about, it's kind of touchy with the wording, but the assault.
Oh, yes.
The assault scenes. The tree assault.
Yeah, so let's talk about the tree assault.
That's how I wrote it. I was like, I don't want to say like the R word, and then with YouTube, and, you know what I mean? Right. You got to be careful.
Yeah, so what were your thoughts about the original?
The original. This is my like one thing about the original. As much as I love this movie, like if I were to show this to somebody who had never seen it before, this is the part where like I'm embarrassed to look at them, because I feel like this scene is like, it's really rough. Like it's kind of vicious. I feel like a little, the way it's shot is a little exploitative.
Yes.
Like when we compare it to the remake, like the original is just so like, there are parts that just seemed unnecessary. Like we don't have to like rip her top. There's like the shot where the camera like kind of swoops in from like between her legs and goes up her body, which feels very just provocative in a way that the scene doesn't need to be, where I'm just like, oh, and it's like bad enough what's happening. Yes. Where I'm like, I don't feel like it needed to be shot this way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the original one, because if it's like rewatching it, I'm like, this is just feels mean.
Yeah, it's terrible. I wish it wasn't there. They've talked about it. They talked about it in interviews where they might have done it differently or taken it out completely, which is why I'm just so surprised that it's even in the remake at all. But yeah, it was during a time where you could do anything to women on camera and nobody would say anything. Yeah. People are still kind of living that way today, but it's a little bit less than. And I just wish that the tree would have just attacked her and didn't enter her. That's all it had to do. And just like enter her mouth and rip out an ear or something like that. Like that was just unnecessary. But it's called The Evil Dead, and assaulting in that way is very evil. So I mean, it illustrated what it was trying to do, but you can be evil by ripping people's limbs off instead.
You are right. It does set the tone really well for like what's about to happen. Like it's not like deep down, like in the, the original is a little more humorous, but it's like, it's not funny. It is scary. Like it really sets the tone really well. I think the remake did at least in the choices of like the camera movements and stuff like that, I think did a little bit better of a job of like conveying the evilness of that and like what's happening without doing any unnecessary like bodice ripping or anything like that we didn't need. So I think they to keep it in, I know it makes sense. It's a scene that like everybody remembers. I think they did a good job as best as they could with
again, like less sexualized. It was less sexualized exactly. In a way.
In a way, yeah. But like it comes out of like the other Mia's mouth. But so I'm like with you, like, why couldn't it just like go into her mouth again? Like like we've already established this. We could just do it again. It's fine. It doesn't have to go the other way.
It's crazy too, because I've heard them talk about, they were all, that cast was ready to do, or at least she was ready to do an Evil Dead 2, but it took too long. Then we ended up with getting Evil Dead Rise, which I love. But it would have been interesting to see what her second film would have been like. She was amazing.
And the ending leaves it very, obviously leaves it very open to something else happening, like as most horror movies do. Yeah, I'd love to see Jane Levy in anything really. But I'd love to see her come back in an Evil Dead movie for sure.
Hell yeah.
And I think it's in here with us now.
And then we have Eric, which I don't know how you feel about him, but he is like, if I made a list of like my least favorite characters in horror movies, Eric is near the top somewhere.
First of all, because he read out the words like an idiot.
Girl, they find that scary ass basement with like the dead cats and everything, and dude locks in on this book like wrapped in like a garbage bag and barbed wire, and is like, you know what I'm gonna do as a white man? I'm gonna open that like
by myself too. Like somebody would have warned you against that. Maybe they didn't in the first one, but
yeah,
you still should have shared it with the group.
At least like so somebody rational could be like, yeah, let's not open this, let's get rid of it. And then like as soon as he opens it, it's like, don't read it, don't say it, don't. And he's like, I'm gonna take notes on all this stuff. He's got his own notebook. I'm like, what are we doing? And then the scribbled out words, he's like, be a detective, I'm gonna like trace it and read the words aloud. I'm like, oh my god. And then to have his just like smug little attitude the whole movie, that's like the nail. Like everything starts happening. Mr. Know-It-All. And then everything starts happening, and he recognizes the stuff from the book and doesn't say anything for the longest time. And I'm like, you're the reason we're here. You're the reason this is happening. I hate him so much. Every time I'm like, she could have just gone through her withdrawals and been a better person, and we could have all gone home.
Does he redeem himself just a little bit when he comes back and helps out David?
I think that's like, I think it's a little too late. Like, like I think he complained too much of the movie. Like he had such an attitude with David too. Like he never came and talked to us.
It's like he was living his own life. He was going through his own issues. Like you had your other friends. Like it was terrible of David to not be there when his mom passed and not be there for his sister.
Yeah.
But it's like, dude, like get over it.
Yeah. He's being such a whiny baby, and then causes the entire movie to happen, and then stabs David in the neck at the end.
Yes. Damn it.
So I'm like, come on. So yeah, any help he gives is like ruined by Deadite Eric, who then kills David, who could have gotten out with Mia, and that would have been so lovely. And I'm like, the whole movie, I'm like, man, like if I ever see Eric, it's on site. It's on site.
Oh shit, watch out, Eric. Watch out. Watch your back. Yeah. And so speaking of Ash's, traits or actions being spread to the other characters, then we have David, who ends up getting a little bit of that hero flair when he tells his sister go and then blows himself up. So I did like seeing that because, he was a bad son and a bad brother. And this was his moment to redeem himself. So I like seeing that.
And he kind of like self-fulfills a little bit, I feel like, because the way everybody talks about him, like the group, definitely I feel like they put him on a pedestal a little bit. Like he's this really good guy, or was this really good guy, and then like went through this hard time. Obviously it seems like they had a lot of hardships in their family and kind of detached for a while, but then comes back and has to like get on that pedestal again and ends up at least saving Mia, if nobody else. At least he redeems himself like in the eyes of his sister, which is nice. And I love seeing the like a sibling tale also, rather than like focusing on like a romantic relationship. I feel like sometimes that gets shoehorned into any movie, really, not just horror movies, a lot. So it's nice to see like a sibling dynamic and a sibling relationship instead.
It's funny you bring that up because I keep biting my tongue right now because I just recorded my comparison video for House of Wax, and they have a similar relationship. And this movie and that movie just have a lot of parallels because we also have a director who it's their feature debut and just amazing effects, mostly practical as well. And I think, the sibling relationship, I think helps it too because it's something different.
I did not realize that about House of Wax, and I love that movie, so it's a very interesting. Love that movie also, but like it's that sibling dynamic is really, really interesting. And then the internet, I'm sure, ruins it with like shipping them together and stuff. I've seen things like I wish I hadn't seen, just like fan fiction wise, but it's nice to see.
And just speaking about technology too, it's cool that with the 2013 version, they made it a point to kind of keep the time period ambiguous. So we don't really see any cell phones or technology, and the clothes are from different eras. So it kind of just keeps it vague and ambiguous as to what time period it is in, which I think which works well for any genre, but really well for horror films.
Well, especially if you're stuck out in the woods too, because I feel like anybody's like first inclination is like, well, why didn't they just take out their cell phones and start, you know what I mean? And I feel like that just opens up so many other like holes you have to cover probably as a filmmaker if you introduce at least, technology into it. Although like 10 years ago, not as advanced as it was now, like trying to remake this now, I think would be hard with cell phones. You'd have to cover a lot of bases, but I really do love when movies do like the time ambiguous kind of setting, because it very much feels like rewatching it this week, it feels like this is a movie that could have come out like last year or something.
I promise not to touch this shit ever again.
Yeah, the beginning of the remake is just fantastic. Like I kind of mentioned before, I feel like there was a lost opportunity in not doing the fast POV like we have in the original, but it's forgiven because we see this Deadite get lit into flames by her father. And it is just the absolute perfect start to this thrill ride because it just doesn't stop until the very end.
Yeah. It's that scene's really like scary too, and I guess it's a really good intro, I guess, if anybody's watching or had watched that movie without any prior knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of give you a taste of like what is coming without giving you too much information. Like, whoa, that was really scary to see her change, and they're all obviously really scared of her, and I don't understand why. And then you kind of end up seeing the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
In the basement with all that horrifying. I would have just left if I opened that basement door. It's time to go.
Yep.
But does it make you like wonder like where all the rest of those people were? Because it seemed like, like townspeople or somebody that was like helping this dad. I feel like that's like a question in the remake. Like I almost every time the intro happens, I'm like, but wait, like, what about these people? Like, where do these people come from? Like, where did the dad find these people? How do they know so much about this? Like, wait.
Yep. Yeah. Definitely wanted more information on that too.
And then I kind of like forget it by the end of the movie because everything else happens. And I'm like, oh, that was great. And then I rewatch it again and I'm like, but what about these people?
All right. Well, before we wrap this video up, Nightmare Maven, go ahead and let our viewers know what you've got coming up on your channel.
All right. I mean, since it's the end of the year, pretty much we're wrapping up. I got all your basic videos coming out. Everything I'm looking forward to next year, 2025, my top like horror movies and horror books of this year, 2024, just wrapping everything up is usually how I end out the year. So we can look forward to that on my channel.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, Stardust. So down below, you'll see all of her links to all of her socials and her channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe to her channel and give her a follow. And until next time, peace.